I'm freaking out, man. I'm freaking out.
Oh my God. Like I even just what I'm seeing coming across my weather app, it just keeps escalating. Cat 1, cat 2, cat 3. Like, what is going on there, Stephanie?
Well, as of this morning, it's a cat 4. However, it once it makes landfall, it's supposed to weaken. So they think it's going to be a cat 3 when it hits us. So if anyone hasn't seen, Hurricane Milton is headed directly towards Tampa, where I live. And I've been here 10 years and I have never been more freaked out about a hurricane. Everything about it's just weird. Like where it's coming from is weird. It almost, when you look on the map, it almost looks like it's coming from Texas to Tampa, which is not normal. It normally is like out in the Atlantic and then it comes up, the Gulf, kind of like heading north. So it's very strange. Um, and everyone's freaking out. Like native Floridians that have been through a million hurricanes, every single person saying the same thing. We don't have a good feeling about this. Like something doesn't feel right. And maybe it's because of Hurricane Helene, where it's like fresh in our mind. But I am a little concerned right now.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And the news is hyping it up so much. And it's like, you guys ever still dealing with the effects of Helene? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So
the back-to-back hurricane thing, like, it's
we can't
crazy.
handle it. Like the coast can't handle another hit. And I know we talked about North Carolina, obviously, because they were hit, far worse than anyone else. But in Florida along the coast, I mean, everyone experienced flooding, people's homes flooded. There's debris everywhere. And
I
so,
think I think I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, DeSantis gave a press conference over the weekend or something, and basically said that the entire state's going to be impacted by Milton.
oh yeah, there's nowhere to go. So that's the thing I wanted to bring up because I have, relatives that live up north that are like, well, why don't you evacuate? Well, let me tell you why. This is the same exact thing that happened during Irma. Okay. So we get so many hurricanes in hurricane season, right? And you don't know until like right before. So let's see, what is it? We found out what Sunday morning, I think, like late Saturday, early Sunday, that this is going to be intense. That's when like people started freaking out. Like the meteorologists are like, yeah, it's going to hit us like really hard in Tampa. It's going to be historical. And so anyhow, I I messaged you because I go out and all the gas stations are out of gas already,
Yeah,
immediately.
already.
They're all out of
That's what I thought
gas.
was crazy.
I woke up early because I'm like, I'm gonna go, as soon as we knew it was the middle of the night, then I woke up, I'm gonna go all out of gas. My mom calls me, she's like, I'm at Walmart. There's not even a shopping cart in sight. Like everything's gone.
That was going to be my next question. What
Hmm.
are the stores
Everything's
like?
gone. Like that is what I wanted to convey on this podcast. When there is an emergency, everything's gone immediately. And then my dad calls, he couldn't even get to Costco because the line on the
Yeah.
street to get into Costco was that long. He waited for like 45 minutes, finally gets a parking spot. Then you walk up to the store and there's a line just to get in the store.
Wow.
Like it's insane. And so last night, my daughter and I, like once the younger ones went to bed, we went and drove around, no gas anywhere. Like we went to multiple gas stations. My husband just woke up like it was 5 a.m. He's out looking right now, trying to find anything he can. And we do prepare, but it's like you don't realize how fast everything happens. They
Yeah.
go from telling you, don't worry, to like freak out. Everyone needs to evacuate. And so I had thought about like packing up the kids and heading to Georgia, but then I'm seeing all these videos, and this is what happened during Irma. I'm seeing all of these videos of 75 standstill
Mhm.
traffic, and people are like, there is no gas. You get off the interstate, no gas anywhere to be found. And there's so many rural areas. I'm like, I don't want to get stuck in my car in the middle
Right.
of nowhere and not be able to fill up. So you're kind of forced to stay. And then all the flights are being canceled. You can't fly out of here. So it's like you're
It's like a
screwed.
movie. It's like a
Hmm.
disaster movie.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost, you tell me because you've been through this with hurricanes, and like my experience has been earthquakes for the most part. And I almost feel like, isn't it worse that you know it's coming and, like,
Yes.
there's nothing you can do?
It is worse. Yeah, because I lived in Illinois with tornadoes.
Mhm.
And that at least, like, yeah, you didn't know. So you had a few minutes of like sheer panic.
Yeah,
But here you have days, days of panic. And it is the one silver lining is like you do everyone comes together. Like I'm gonna go outside today. Everyone's gonna be outside helping people get hurricane shutters on and all, so it's like people come together, but it is terrifying and you don't know. Like they always try to predict the best that they can. The only thing that gives me hope is every single hurricane that I've ever experienced that looks like it's going to hit Tampa, last minute it shifts. And it's
yeah,
usually like south of us that gets slammed or up in the panhandle and Georgia. So it's like, that's the other thing. My mom's like, you're going to go drive to Georgia. And then what if Georgia gets hit because the thing shifts?
right.
So it's like we have a newer home. The governor was saying if you have a home that was built after 2004, it should be up to like hurricane standards, and our windows can take a cat 3. So as long as it's not more than a cat 3, like we should be fine. But now it's a cat 4, so I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. But
And it's supposed to
anyways,
hit when? Tomorrow?
that's it keeps shifting. It keeps changing because this storm, it's a small storm, which is it's like good and bad because a small storm can intensify quickly and it can also detensify or whatever quickly. So they don't know exactly when it's going to hit. It's been everything from like Tuesday night to Thursday, at like the beginning of the day. So I have no idea. So most likely we won't be able to record on Wednesday because they're telling us like just plan on losing power. Like you're not going
Yeah.
to have power. And that's the other thing, they were saying if you have a home 2004 after, just stay put. You're best to hunker down if you're not on the coast. If you're on the coast, get the hell out of there. And then if you need electricity for anything, any medical needs or anything, like you have to leave the state because they're like the whole state's going to get wiped out. And you look at the path of this thing and it's where all of the what do you call it? Like where you get the power from,
Mhm.
and they're thinking those are all going to get knocked out. So it's like
Oh, all
freaking
like
me
the
out.
facilities, all the power
Yes.
facilities?
Yes.
Wow. Oh, that's so
So,
scary.
and just with everything we've talked about with Helene and what we're going to talk
Uh-huh.
about today, that's why I'm freaking out just a little bit.
Yeah, but the one thing that you just brought up, which is really related to what we're talking about today, is you talked about how you and your neighbors, like, people are helping each other already. You
Yeah.
know, it's Americans helping Americans. And that's kind of the focus of our podcast today in terms of kind of like Friday, it's, Americans versus the government, right? And there's so many crazy stories that are continuing to develop with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. And like some of the shit is so weird that I'm not sure what to believe. But I will say the stories that I'm least likely to believe are the ones coming from the MSM about how, everything we're being told about the lack of relief efforts is, quote, ramped up misinformation, end quote, or attempts at election interference, conspiracy theories from Republicans trying to tie disaster to immigration because we're a month away from the election. And it's all just like crazy. I guess FEMA has a rumors page on their website now where they've posted, that they're not confiscating property or donations. They're not capping recovery funds at $750 a person. And FEMA's spokesperson, Jacqueline Roth, she told The Guardian, she said, quote, there are many dangerous, misleading rumors spreading about Helene response, which can actively prevent survivors from getting help. Our top priority is ensuring that disaster assistance is reaching people in need, end quote. Now, I I believe that like FEMA is on site and disaster relief is taking place? Yes, I do. Okay. But it's clear that a lot of people in need aren't getting assistance, and our government has already admitted that they were actively prohibiting citizens from helping each other for, quote, safety reasons. And it's also really clear to me that our government has other priorities. So I want to start out with some what I think are jaw-dropping stories about the Biden-Harris admin that just confirmed for me their total lack of interest in helping the American people. So last week I mentioned Tim Kennedy. He's the co-founder of Save Our Allies. He's an Army Green Beret Master Sergeant, a Special Forces sniper. He was part of the rescue efforts when the Biden-Harris admin like royally fucked up the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and he carried out helicopter missions there. He's doing the same with hurricane victims. Well, apparently, one of the reasons that civilian rescue missions were stopped by FEMA last week was for Biden to take a fucking photo op.
Oh my
So,
God. Not surprising, but so disgusting.
yes, exactly. And he told Fox News, he said, quote, there was a no fly when the president flew in today, and he was referring to last Wednesday. And he said, we had to land helicopters to not go rescue people so a photo op could be taken place. And then on Saturday, oh my God, Saturday, Kamala goes on X and she pledges to send $157 million in assistance to Lebanon for their dire humanitarian crisis. Like, I shit you not.
You're
She
going to
wrote,
go on our X, Tara, because I saw someone posted this on TikTok. So I went on our X page and I commented the shit out of her post.
good.
My blood was boiling. I'm like, either you're an idiot or you just don't care. Like, whatever it is, this is just horrible.
Oh, they don't care. It's blatant disregard for the Americans. And here's what she wrote. She said, quote, I'm concerned about the security and well-being of civilians suffering in Lebanon and will continue working to help meet the needs of all civilians there, end quote. And she added that the money would go to, quote, essential needs, including food, shelter, water, protection, and sanitation to help those who have been displaced by the recent conflict, end quote. Like, are you fucking kidding me? To say that's tone deaf is an understatement. Like, this is a slap in the face to all of the hurricane victims. And it's like, then we have photos of DHS Secretary Mayorkas out shopping on Saturday at like some high-end menswear store. And the photo was taken by a reporter with the Washington Free Beacon. And it shows Mayorkas like, I guess he was strolling through the men's section of this place called Sid Mashburn. I've never heard of it. I guess it's a luxury men's clothing store.
Us peasant
And
people haven't heard of that brand. Okay.
exactly. Exactly. And he's just like picking out clothes surrounded by his security detail, like he doesn't have a care in the world. And it's like, this is the man who's responsible for FEMA. This is the same guy who last week announced that FEMA doesn't have enough funding for hurricane season, but he's out shopping. And I think the reporter's name is Joe Gabriel Simons, and he posted the photo on X on Saturday. And he wrote, quote, for context about all the FEMA stuff, I saw Alejandro Mayorkas this afternoon at Sid Mashburn, which is the second time I've seen him there on a Saturday afternoon in about a month. So suffice it to say, the guy isn't working around the clock, end quote. But Elon Musk had the best response because he said, quote, he's shopping for fancy clothes while people are suffering from hurricane damage. This is some Hunger Games shit, end quote. And Stephanie, before I even read that response, when I was like finding all these stories about Biden and Kamala and now Mayorkas, I was like, that's exactly what this is. It's the fucking Hunger Games.
It totally is. And I was thinking of Marie Antoinette when she was like, let them eat cake. Or I know
Mhm.
that's like not a true quote of hers, but that's what it feels like. Like they don't care and they're not even trying to hide it. And
Nope.
like, yeah, people are going wild on social media because, people are still suffering in North Carolina. And that's what's so aggravating. Like FEMA showed up a week after the hurricane,
Yeah.
and then this morning I heard someone was talking about how they went up to FEMA in North Carolina and they're like, where are you set up? Where can we send people? And they're saying, oh, you have to look on our app. They're like, people don't have their phones. First of all, they lost everything, but they don't have internet. And like Starlink, even that is limited. Just insane. So as all of this is going on, Kamala does an interview on the Call Her Daddy podcast which is like this podcast that's about like sexual encounters and stuff. Like it's a non-serious podcast. And so people are like, what the fuck? Like everyone is just going nuts over this. I mean, there is a real emergency. People are dead and dying because they're not being rescued, they're not getting care. And she's talking on a sex podcast.
Yeah, isn't it like up to 213 known victims now with
Oh,
still like
yeah.
hundreds missing?
There's so many missing, and that's the thing. You hear these stories of people there just talking about all of these bodies that aren't even being addressed. No one's even picking them up. So how many people it is, I mean, no one knows, just like
Yeah,
Maui, and we probably never will
exactly.
know, just like Maui. And this is what has me worried. Like the way that she's reacting, and Mayorkas and Biden, it's like they're so blatant. They're not even, trying to pretend. And like, Tara, it gives me the worst feeling. It makes me think, like, are we even going to have an election? Because they're not worried. Maybe because they know that it really doesn't matter. Because why else would they be acting this way like a month before the election? And
Right.
North Carolina, isn't it a swing state? So it's like you
Yeah.
think that they would be set up there and doing everything they can, and they're not. And that makes me a little concerned. Like, do they have something planned where they know that it just doesn't really matter?
Well,
So that's freaking me out.
it's like you mentioned on Friday. Are people really going to go vote when they've been displaced from their homes, they've lost
Right.
everything? Like that's not going to be their priority mindset is, oh, it's voting day, you know? And,
Mm-hmm.
and how
Yep.
I read a bunch of the polling places were destroyed in the
Yep.
hurricane. So it's like, what the fuck are they going to do?
Well, look at here in Florida. If the whole state loses power,
Right.
I mean, are people gonna worry about voting, or are they gonna worry about surviving? And it's a red
Exactly.
state. So it's just none of this is sitting well. And like I said, my gut is telling me like something's going on. And so in addition to the Call Her Daddy podcast, she's also getting a ton of backlash on social media about that post that you talked about, sending money to Lebanon. And so now, like after all of that backlash, now a week later, she's posting like all of these things that she's supposedly doing, and helping North Carolina by sending like water. Like it's so vague, and there's no talk of actually sending money. Like the Lebanon post, it was crystal clear how much money they're getting.
A
All the posts
hundred
about
and
North,
$57 billion,
yeah.
which is less than FEMA has spent on this emergency.
And that's just this payment. Like they're up to 300 something from previous payments. But yeah, no talk about that. Like she's just sending all these vague posts like, "Oh, we're helping in North Carolina." Which is hilarious because I saw a video of her where she was supposedly helping like pack up supplies, and she was talking to a woman who was like one of the first on site in North Carolina, and this woman was telling her, "I showed up and I was expecting tents everywhere, supplies everywhere. There were like 20 cases of water, and we were the first people bringing supplies. The government was nowhere to be found." And then Kamala's just sitting there like, "Oh, really?" Just trying to play it down like it's so absurd. And she's making these vague statements that are just, everyone knows she's full of shit. They're not doing anything. And even if she was, it's a little late at this point. Like, look at how many people have been stuck and probably died while waiting for help. Um, so then like you get people responding and they're like, "Oh, great. So you're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine and Lebanon, and we get water." Like
Yeah.
that's the message she's sending crystal clear. And then you're going to love this. Okay. Your favorite White House press secretary, KJP, held a press briefing where she's totally denying that FEMA funds were used for illegal migrants, even though the spending is literally published. Like it is out there
Yeah.
for everyone to see and fact check. But I'm going to play this clip. So it starts with KJP recently saying that, all of this stuff is false. And then the next clip is from her in September of 2022. So listen to this.
Biden did not take FEMA relief money to use on migrants. So FEMA regional administrators have been meeting with city officials on site to coordinate available federal support from FEMA and other federal agencies. Funding is also available through FEMA's emergency food and shelter program to eligible local governments and non-for-profit organizations upon request to support humanitarian relief for migrants.
So her own words, and she's trying to deny it now. So like, let me ask you this. Who do you think lies more? KJP or Tim Waltz?
Well, I would have to say KJP only because we've been listening to her lies for almost 4 years now, and I'm just, we're still just getting Tim Walz's lies, so I'm sure he'll catch up.
Yeah. And it's like if they're lying about this, what else are they lying about? It's like I think I'll believe the eyewitness accounts over our government.
But the thing is, it's on the fucking DHS website. How do you lie about something that's in black and white on your own fucking government website? Like,
Well, I think they've gotten away with it for so long that they think they can just keep playing this game. And they fail to realize that now, because of social media and podcasts and everything else, people are finding out the real information. People aren't being brainwashed by the media anymore, which is probably why they're trying to push all this censorship and get rid of TikTok and everything else. But yeah, like they can't get away with it. Like the gig is up. We know what they're doing.
yeah, and I just like I'm so grateful for the publications and the very few media outlets that aren't part of the, left-wing elite mob because it's the only way we're seeing stories for people that like aren't focused on social media.
Yeah.
And I will say there's one story I saw in the New York Post yesterday and it was about Batcave, North Carolina. I guess it was one of the towns that was like almost totally destroyed by the hurricane. And the residents are saying that FEMA basically told people that they have to fend for themselves because the road was closed. So there was a local resident named Chelsea Atkins, and she said FEMA called her and they told her that they wanted to inspect her house. And so they were coming up, and then they called her back and said that they couldn't drive around the road closed sign because they weren't allowed to. So she's like, "Yeah, you can drive it like by car for sure. It's not that bad. You just have to drive around the sign." But they said they couldn't drive around the sign. So FEMA didn't show up. So what did the residents do? Like they banded together, they opened the road and they started their own cleanup. And I guess it was a bunch of like apple orchard workers with chainsaws and they worked with a local grading contractor to clear the roadways and they scavenged building supplies to shore up homes that were teetering on the edge of the Broad River, which I guess is like 10 times wider than it was before the storm came through. So what did FEMA do? Fucking nothing. Like nothing. And in the wake of Mayorkas saying that FEMA doesn't have enough funds for hurricane season, at least the House Homeland Security Subcommittee, like the one of the excuse me, the chairman of the subcommittee, Rep. Anthony D'Esposito from New York, he sent a letter to FEMA questioning their prep for the hurricane, including the use of like advanced forecasting and rainfall modeling, their pre-positioning of resources, and how they're coordinating with federal, state, and local response partners. So FEMA confirmed they received the letter, and then a FEMA spokesperson tells ABC News that there's more than 6,400 federal personnel, which includes FEMA staff, that have been deployed to affected areas. They've distributed more than 13.2 million meals, 13.4 million liters of water, 157 generators, and more than 492,000 tarps. And the White House also said that there's more than 6,100 National Guard members helping out with disaster relief. And the Army Corps of Engineers has set up like 12 emergency operations centers across the Southeast, 3 of which are in North Carolina. But then I was listening to Fox News, and one of the Florida state guardsmen, his name is Jonathan Howard, and he basically said that like the government's just painting a pretty picture of what's happening and that it has nothing to do with reality. And I guess Biden at some point claimed that the people who've been displaced by the hurricane are, quote, getting everything they need and they're very happy across the board, end quote. Like, what the fuck? And this guy's like, no, these people are trapped in the mountains. Like, what are they supposed to do? Like, order something? Like, there's no way for things to even be delivered to their house. And he called it a complete failure of leadership and said there is no leadership, there's no command and control, and nobody has a clue what's going on.
Yeah,
So
and what are
it's
people going to do with food and water when they're stuck on a mountainside? Like, you need to save them first before you can even get them those supplies. So I don't care how many cases of water you send when you're leaving them stranded in the mountains.
exactly. And you mentioned this on Friday, but you have to apply for the assistance and
Yeah.
you have to go online and do the application. And it's like, these people can't fucking do that, right? And we talked about this on Friday too. Like, civilians are telling a totally different story about rescue efforts and even about our government not allowing Americans to help each other. And you mentioned Starlink earlier. And on Friday, Elon Musk reported that FEMA blocked the delivery of additional Starlink units to help residents who lost internet access. And he posted on X about a note that he had received from a SpaceX engineer who was on the ground in North Carolina. And the note said, quote, "Hey Elon, update here on site of Asheville, North Carolina. We've powered up 2 large operating bases for choppers to deliver goods into hands. We've deployed 300 plus Starlinks and outpour as it has saved many lives. The big issue is FEMA's actively blocking shipments and seizing goods and services locally and locking them away to state they are their own. It's very real and scary how much they have taken control to stop people helping. We are blocked now on the shipments of new Starlinks coming in until we get an escort from the fire department, but that may not be enough," end quote. Like, what? And so Elon responds, and he basically said FEMA's response is belligerent government incompetence, which I don't even think it's incompetence. I think it's just fucking purposeful.
Yep.
Like, it's not, yeah, I mean, this is so beyond, you cannot deny that it's not purposeful at this point. And so I guess you know, Transportation Secretary Buttigieg responded, and he said, quote, "No one's shutting down the airspace, and the FAA doesn't block legitimate rescue and recovery flights," end quote. If you're encountering a problem, give me a call. Okay, Stephanie, I guess the question is, what qualifies as legitimate rescue and recovery flights?
I know. Well, they should all be legitimate.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, no, this has to be intentional. There's no way this is incompetence, just like everything else from this administration. Like, they're intentionally destroying America and now like leaving these people to die, basically. And it's like all these people on social media, left and right, they're posting like a map and they're crossing out North Carolina and they're writing like Ukraine or like Lebanon. And they're like, maybe if we say that we're Lebanon or if we say that we're illegals, we'll have a better chance of getting help, And it's sad, but it's true. Like,
Mhm.
they're taking better care of other countries than they are of Americans. And speaking of which, Eric Trump went on Sean Hannity and he said there are currently 157 hotels in New York City that are completely filled with illegal migrants. Yet the people of North Carolina whose homes were washed away are offered $750, but they have to go online and apply. And obviously, they can't do that. I mean, it's so mind-boggling, but this is literally what's happening, and I can't believe they're trying to deny it.
Yeah, and so last
Mm.
night, Biden announced that he's ordering the DoD to send an additional 500 active duty troops into Western North Carolina to like aid with recovery efforts. But here's one of the things he said. He said that they're equipped with, quote, "advanced technological assets to provide greater situational awareness on the ground and assist with future resource planning across the region," end quote. What the fuck does that even mean? Future resource planning, like for the immediate future or for what they're planning to do with the land? Because one of the quote conspiracy theories I've seen is that BlackRock and Vanguard have dominion over the lithium, quartz, and gold mines in North Carolina. Like, is that part of the future resource planning? And Stephanie, I know you have to have seen more about this than me.
Yeah. So those mines that we talked about in North Carolina that are like, the only place in the world where you can get like that pure of quartz, and then there's lithium and everything else. Well, no surprise, BlackRock and Vanguard are the largest shareholders of those mines. But what is surprising is that people are saying that Doug Emhoff, who is Kamala's husband, supposedly has the largest stake in the mines via BlackRock, which he's invested heavily in. And so allegedly, like, he has the final say over permitting. Now, I haven't been able to like verify any of that, but I wouldn't be surprised. And like you mentioned previously, the Biden-Harris administration is using our tax dollars to subsidize the EV industry with $15.5 billion and then $200 billion towards the Ukraine war, right? Well, all of these mines that Doug Emhoff is invested in have the rare resources that are needed for electric vehicles and military weapons. Like, just connect the dots. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, they are going to benefit big time if Kamala's husband just so happens to have a major stake in these mines that hold these resources. And it would explain why Kamala is so eager to push this green agenda and keep spending money in Ukraine, because she's benefiting from it. We're not. But if they personally are, that would explain why they keep pushing it. And the more that they spend on like electric vehicles and military weapons, the more of those resources are needed and the more those shareholders get in their pockets. So, like, I just don't understand how this isn't a conflict of interest. But like, just look at Nancy Pelosi, right? Because who directly benefited from stock market gains more than Nancy Pelosi? And all of those stock market gains just happened to follow policies that she passed. So it's like they get away with it, but why would we think this isn't happening in North Carolina?
Right. And the more they get away with it, the more blatant they become about doing it and don't care to even try to hide it.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not the only new thing. So there's another conspiracy that kind of goes with our last episode. And this is one of the reasons why I'm freaking out about this Hurricane Milton. So last time we talked about HARP being what could possibly be manipulating the weather, right? Well, there's a new conspiracy theory that's emerged, and this time it involves hurricane seeding. So, kind of like cloud seeding. We've talked about that in the past. And we know like that caused all of that massive flooding in Dubai, and it's pretty open. Like, they're not really denying cloud seeding. But I didn't really think about seeding hurricanes until I saw multiple people on TikTok who track these like flight patterns. And I don't know if they're like pilots or what, but they have access to where you can see like any flight, the information on the plane, you can track the flight pattern. And there were some anomalies during the hurricane. So allegedly, a P-3 Orion plane that's owned by Lockheed Martin showed up on flight patterns the evening of September 25th, when Hurricane Helene was predicted to take a path that would end in Western Kentucky. So that evening, this P-3 had a 6-hour flight pattern inside the hurricane. And after that, the hurricane shifted more east towards Tennessee. Then on September 26th, which was the day it made landfall, the same P-3 was spotted again doing another flight pattern inside the hurricane as it was making landfall. And the storm shifted further east to the North Carolina area in eastern Tennessee. And obviously, we know the impact that it had. So the question is, like, was this P-3 simply tracking the hurricane, or was it cloud seeding, hurricane seeding to intensify the storm and shift it? So next, we have one of my favorite people on TikTok. She goes by the name of Glamham. She's that like radio frequency woman that has like all the different sonar and everything. So she was looking at flight patterns and she saw the NASA P-3. So NASA has one P-3 and she sees it showing up with this super strange flight pattern that literally made a triangle right around Asheville, North Carolina. like a perfect triangle that covers all the areas that were totally wiped out. So her hypothesis was the same thing, hurricane seeding. And so you might think like, oh my gosh, this is so far-fetched. What a conspiracy. Well, let me just talk about what's publicly available on hurricane seeding that anyone can go and look. It's even on Wikipedia with direct links to all the sources. So right on Wikipedia, it says that hurricane manipulation started in 1947 with Project Cirrus, which was a collaboration with the U.S. Army Signal Corps, General Electric, and the Office of Naval Research, as well as the U.S. Air Force. So according to Wikipedia, quote, the project's two B-17 and B-29 of the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Group were dispatched from MacDill Field, Florida, to intercept the hurricane. The seeding B-17 flew along the rain bands of the hurricane and dropped nearly 180 pounds of crushed dry ice into the clouds, end quote. The result of this was the eye of the hurricane moved 100 miles west of where it was expected, and it changed direction. This was in 1947 with dry ice, okay? It caused widespread devastation in Georgia, including loss of life. And so the public blamed the seeding and they threatened lawsuits. And so Project Cirrus was canceled. And at first, the seeding was officially denied. And it took the government like years before they admitted that they were actually doing this. So, according to the September 12th, 1965 edition of the Fort Lauderdale News and Sun Sentinel, in 1947, a hurricane, quote, went wacky. And 12 years later, it was admitted the storm had, in fact, been seeded, end quote. So the government's admitted to this. Then they started this whole thing back up again in the 60s with Project Storm Fury. Again, this is publicly available, declassified information. So Storm Fury, from like the Wikipedia article, it says, quote, Project Storm Fury was an attempt to weaken tropical cyclones by flying aircraft into them and seeding them with silver iodide. The project was run by the United States government from 1962 to 1983. The hypothesis was that the silver iodide would cause supercooled water in the storm to freeze, disrupting the inner structure of the hurricane, and this led to seeding several Atlantic hurricanes, end quote. So the government has admitted to hurricane seeding for decades. And if they were causing massive manipulation to hurricanes in 1947, imagine what they can do now with these P3s, which are far more advanced and they are modified. NASA's is like super modified. So speaking of which, the article states that the government acquired two P3s for $30 million from Lockheed. How interesting that there were two P3 flight patterns inside Hurricane Helene. Like, it really makes you wonder, right?
Yeah, this is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I just keep feeling like this is not real. This is like a movie, but it's legitimately happening.
I was like freaking out when I saw this. I'm like, it is like right there for everyone to see. And people are like asking their Amazon Alexa like about hurricane seeding, and it's like, yes, and they're, you know, the government is admitting to this, yes, it happened, and like talking about it like, because all of this information is on the internet, it is declassified, and it's just right there for everyone to see. So anyhow, like another reason why I'm worried about Hurricane Milton, let me tell you a little fun fact. I went and searched Milton because my daughter and I were like, where do they come up with these names? Like Milton is such like an old timey name. So I searched Milton. The very first thing that pops up is this guy named John Milton, who is a poet in the 1600s. And he wrote about political upheaval, war, and the end of man. So that freaked me out. Like, great, who the hell picked that name for a hurricane during election season? Another thing that's a little weird. So yeah, it's like mind-boggling, but I'm thinking hurricane seeding for sure. Like this sounds spot on, and there's flight patterns to prove it.
Especially when you were talking about the direction that Milton's coming from and how it's just completely abnormal, and it's like nothing is nothing is following the normal patterns, and again, it's all being blamed on climate change,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it has nothing to do with fucking climate change, and it's just manipulation, purposeful manipulation of the weather as a means of destruction, purposeful
I
destruction.
mean, it would explain why this super small storm is pretty much gonna like hit the entire state of Florida, which like,
Right.
again, nothing really makes sense about it, but that makes sense when you hear that background. Um, and if there's anything that Hurricane Helene, along with the last 3.5 years of the Biden Harris administration, has taught us, it's this: the government is not coming to save you. When you need them most, don't expect a damn thing. But like we said earlier, the silver lining in all of this is that it's showing that Americans are good people and we take care of one another. And we're seeing volunteers from all over that are taking their own funds and helping people in North Carolina. And I want to play a clip from this guy on TikTok with the handle at Mountain View Ranch 11. And he is offering refuge for all the families that were displaced in North Carolina. So listen to this.
Hey guys, this is an invitation to all the people displaced. I don't have much, but I have 84 acres in eastern Kentucky. I got a place for you to come, to get your bearings, to get ready. If you need to be here permanently, temporarily, it doesn't matter to me. I hope this video gets out. I just had my account banned. I had 105,000 awesome followers, awesome network of people that I lost just like that. And that could happen to every one of us, and it will eventually. It's inevitable. So while we can, we need to use this app. And right now, I need your help because I don't have them. I don't have that. I'm relying on you to like this, share this, repost this, get this out to the people in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Virginia, Tennessee. We're here for you. Now, Gary, why does this hit you so hard? Well, it's not just hit me so hard because I'm watching people suffer. I'm in eastern Kentucky, but I was born and raised in Rutherford, North Carolina. Chimney Rock, Lake Lure, that's where I used to spend my childhood at the lake. And all my family's there. My aunts, my uncles, my sisters, every bit of my immediate family live in that Rutherford County. And I don't have much. I don't have resources to go down there and take y'all a bunch of resources. I don't have that financially, but what I do have is this mountain. And I invite anyone that needs a place to come. Like I said, temporarily, permanently, it doesn't matter. But my land is your land. We're Americans and the darkness is all around us, guys. But I'll tell you what, it's time for the light to shine. You're the light. We're the light, man.
So this guy's gone viral.
That
And
almost made me cry.
yeah, like what a true patriot. And it's things like that that restore like my faith in humanity, And it's like when the government turns its back on us, we still have each other as Americans. Like there are still good people out there helping.
Yeah, I wonder why he got his account banned.
I think, and I think what he was trying to allude to, but he doesn't want to get it banned again, is that he was offering this help and then his account got banned because he had a ton of followers. He's been around a long time, but all of a sudden when he starts offering refuge, all of a sudden they close his account down.
Yeah,
That's strange,
a little.
So yeah, this whole topic has been a heavy topic. And clearly, I have a lot of anxiety about the hurricane coming through. So I thought that we should end on a funny note. So I want to play a clip of a new Trump ad that my daughter sent me. And you are going to love this, Tara.
Remember the days when that mean orange guy was in office and there were just no new wars? It was frustrating, right? But now, thanks to Joe Mala, those worries are a thing of the past. With Joe Mala, we get fresh wars nearly every week. Finally, companies like BlackRock and Raytheon can thrive again. Your tax money now goes exactly where it belongs, straight into funding global misery. And who wouldn't want that? But that's not all. With Joe Mala, our southern border is wide open. Now anyone can stroll right into the U.S. and start collecting welfare. And hey, you're going to love your new Haitian neighbors. Plus, Joe Mala is helping clean up the streets.
Thanks to this breakthrough, all those stray cats in your neighborhood, gone. It's a whole new world. Ever feel like food and energy were just too affordable? Joe Mala fixes that too. With reckless financial policies, life's finally exciting again. Who needs affordable bills when you can struggle to make ends meet and love every second of it? So ask your shrink about Joe Mala today. Because why settle for peace and prosperity when you could have endless wars, open borders, and skyrocketing costs? Joe Mala. Because your tax dollars deserve to fund misery. Joe Mala is not intended to treat, prevent, or cure anything. Continued use of Joe Mala will likely destroy your economy, start World War III, and cause men to be more feminine. Stop using Joe Mala if you are tired of high prices and global conflicts.
Okay, so we got a new word, Joe Mala.
Joe Mala. I was gonna say I haven't heard that one yet. And I love that they're still playing up the cat thing.
Oh, I know. I know. I'm telling you, you have to follow Team Trump on TikTok. It's like their official campaign page, and everything they post is hilarious. Whoever's running that is so freaking good. But I thought that would, make everyone laugh. Let's leave on a positive note. So with that, I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. I will keep everyone posted the best I can. If we can't do the podcast, I'll try to get on TikTok if I can and at least update everyone. But yeah, send some positive thoughts to Florida and North Carolina. And hopefully we'll see you back here on Wednesday, otherwise Friday. So thanks everyone for tuning in.